As health tyrants push for a return to lockdowns, mask mandates, and other measures designed to strip us of our freedoms, people around the world are finally waking up and taking back the power that's been in their hands all along. Massive protests have erupted in Australia, France, Greece, and more as the media scrambles to keep it all hidden. What are they so afraid of? Could it be perhaps that we might realize we're not alone, that we truly are the majority, and that they're concerned, outnumbered, cornered, and in absolute panic? Let's find out on today's show. Welcome to Man in America. It's good to see everybody. Thank you for all your patience as I've gotten everything set up. I'm now in my new studio, which you wouldn't know it, but it's designed to be that way that you're not going to notice the difference. So I'm so glad to be here. I really appreciate everyone who's joining me live. I apologize again for the gap in shows as we've been going through a change. As you probably know, I moved recently and had to, kind of move houses and build a new studio and all that stuff. So it's so good to be here with you. And today is going to be a little bit of a different show. I guess not a different show, but today's I think is more of a dialogue I want to have. I want to talk about what's happening in the news and the topics that I'm covering, which you'll obviously you might notice these kinds of topics that we have going on. These are the topics that I have to be more careful with. Um, it's it's again, even here's another example of our freedoms kind of changing. But these are the topics that unfortunately I have to be careful even talking about on social media because I'm at risk for being banned, being canceled, being censored, which to me, that's the one thing that really, in my opinion, that's what kind of shows what's really happening. So again, I still going to go through some news and some information and some updates about what's happening, but at the same time, I think that we have to have a very real discussion about what's happening in our world right now because our freedoms are being stripped like we have never seen before, and it's happening globally. Here in America, I feel relatively safe. Um, yeah, relatively is a good word, which I never thought I'd be saying that even 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. I never thought that I'd be, feeling the way that I do right now in America. But there's countries like Australia, the UK, a lot of the European countries, Greece, France, where these are countries where there are serious things going on in these countries, and people have completely lost so many of their freedoms and over small things. Like in Australia, they're doing complete lockdowns, right? They're doing absolute lockdowns where people you can't go more than 5 kilometers from your house. You can only go out once. You can only have one person go out, per family, once a day for critical things like groceries. You've got a lot of places where, like France, for instance, where they're implementing the jab passport. So I'll say jab and as my word here. I'm actually going to pull my headphone out so I can just be a little more relaxed today. But it's there's all these things that are happening across the world. But as is usual for Man in America, I do see that there is a lot of hope, and I'm seeing there's so many silver linings, which I want to talk about that. Which do give me a lot of encouragement. And fundamentally, as I've said before, I believe God wins. So I really do believe that at the end of the day, that God does win. And that regardless of what happens, I think that right now what we're seeing is we've really got Satan, I think, kind of running amok in this world and just trying, as I understand, as I look at the situation we're in this world right now, I think that the time period that we are in is, I think we're in this a very, very big, probably kind of final battle of good and evil that's playing out on Earth. And I think that the evil Satan, whatever you want to call it, I look at it in my own certain ways, has been in control for a very, very long time. But the timeline is coming to an end, and the people that the bad people that are in control, they're losing their window. And so as they're losing their window, they're having to push and push and push. And so that's what I think of what everything that we're seeing happening and what I'm going to be talking about today. These are all reflective of something. And I'll share my thoughts on what that might be throughout the show. But what you're seeing playing out here is there's this level of urgency and panic, which is almost hard to make sense of, especially as it relates to the jab. It's like, why, under the guise of saying, hey, we want to get people, back to freedom. We want to, reopen everything. But we're now seeing that as they're reversing everything, they're saying, well, actually, even if you got the jab, you still have to wear a mask. You still have to do this. So even the people that thought they were going to be gaining their freedom back through this, through going and getting the jab, they are now seeing that that's not the case. And so I have a feeling that what we're going to see is even those people, those folks that rushed off to get the jab or were coerced into it, believing that that would give them their freedom again. I think that they're even starting to see the true reality of this. Okay. So anyway, so I'm going to jump into this, the first news article I have here for you, which is just, again, I'm not going to go heavy into the news items today, but I want to summarize what's happening right now in the world. So looking at our first article, so basically, I'm not sure if you saw this, the Department of Justice, this was on Tuesday, the Department of Justice, I'll read this little bit for you here, published, this is on Monday, actually, this article is Tuesday, they published an opinion indicating that the jab mandates are legal despite its being only approved for emergency use. So the judgment was brought to light as areas across the country have either mauled or implemented mandates in some capacity amid a surge of cases. Surge, right? Is it which tests are telling them that there's these surges? Again, I have to be very careful with how I talk about these things because I still am on YouTube and Facebook, which is a blessing because I can reach more people, that's the goal right now. So I think you understand what I'm saying when I'm talking our own double speak, right? But basically, what the DOJ said is that the citizens have a right to be informed of certain information, including the option to accept or remove administration, though businesses, government, and other entities are not prohibited from requiring doses of this, right? So as much as they told us at the very beginning, Biden coming out saying, look, we're not going to implement passports, all these things. This is basically the DOJ giving free rein, saying, look, if you're a company, if you want to require this for your employees or for your patrons, et cetera, if you want to require this, you're allowed. Go ahead. Even though it still is not approved by the FDA, it's still under emergency use. But again, this is Biden's DOJ saying that you're allowed to do this. And what we're seeing though is we're now seeing it's like, okay, well, what companies do you think are jumping on that train to do that? Do you think it's the strong conservative companies, or do you think it's the companies that have so far played a very, very negative role, and they've been working against our country? So we'll imagine, okay, as we have here, Epoch Times article here, that Netflix is now joining Facebook and Google, right? So these companies which have tens of thousands, if not maybe even in the hundreds of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of employees, they are now mandating the jab so this is Facebook, Google, and Netflix are all mandating what they say. So that the Netflix, following the lead of Google and Facebook, will be imposing a jab mandate for the cast and crew of all of its U.S. productions, the first major Hollywood studio to do so. It says, according to a report from Deadline, the mandate applies to all actors and any crew that comes into close contact with them, known as Zone A. Zone A, what the heck does that mean? All these terms. Exceptions for the requirement could include, they always ease these things in, right? That could include religious, medical, and age reasons, but are likely to be rare, right? So again, this is what they keep this is what they keep saying, right? Is that we might do this, right? So we might do this, and then you think, okay, well, look, there's going to be exceptions, and they keep pushing a little further, and by the end of it, you're sitting in a gulag, right? That's what they'd want. Because if you remember, gosh, I remember back when the pandemic first started, a lot of people talked about these jab passports, right? Are they going to be mandated, required? And at that time, I mean, it was really viewed as a conspiracy. It was like, no, that's you guys are conspiracy theorists. There's no intentions for that. There's no digital ID, um, any of this. And now we have it seeing that these big companies, Google, Facebook, right, that they're now making their own employees do that. But the thing is that it's not just say if you work at Facebook, right? When I lived in New York City, one of my favorite restaurants, I'll admit, was Shake Shack. I mean, their burgers, everything were amazing. So, but here we have like, Gateway Pundit covering this, that the Shake Shack founder requiring proof of the jab for both employees and customers. And the owner says it will make more people want to dine with us. So this is the Shake Shack founder, and this he owns many more restaurants um, than just Shake Shack, right? So this is Danny Mayer announced on CNBC that his restaurants will require both employees and customers. So what's that mean? That I can no longer go to Shake Shack because I'm not going to show them my ID card, or maybe they're going to make us wear yellow stars. Maybe that's the intention, right? But yeah, so Shake Shack, and unfortunately, I think this is just the beginning because what we have seen is as soon as the DOJ releases this statement, we're now seeing all these companies come out and make all these companies make out and implement these new rules, right? They've got Biden's permission, right? So why not? They've got Biden's permission. So and I see Megan G commenting, and that's exactly it, right? She says time to boycott and create our own communities, and this is what I think is going to happen because now I'll take a sidestep and just say really quickly that I'm not, and I have to be very careful with this. I'm not advising anybody for or against their own medical treatment, right? At least not on YouTube. I'm not. If you follow me on Telegram, I'll share my opinion with you. And if you follow me there, you probably know what I think about these things. But look, some of you may have gotten the jab. That's fine. That is your own choice. I'm not going to tell you not to. For me personally, I'm young. I'm in my 30s. I think it's a very low risk. There's a lot of reasons why, for me personally, I'm not rushing off to get it, nor is my wife, and especially not my daughter. So again, I'll leave it up to you. I'm not here to shame people, etc. But this, to me, though, this is no longer about whether I want a certain treatment or not. To me, this is getting into something where I feel like our most fundamental rights are being trampled on. And what makes me even more concerned, and I think also more, I think just confident in saying that our rights are completely being trampled on, and that there's something nefarious behind it, is the censorship, the level of control surrounding it. Because like I care about you as my viewer, whether you're Sandy watching me or Lisa watching me or Judith watching me. Like I care about you. I really care about your health, your family. I'm a fellow American. I'm a fellow human if you're not in America. And I believe that you're probably a good person searching for what you can do to just to further and to help your family and to help our society. And so I don't just care about my own rights. If I see that someone like you, or say Brian Wood, if I see that they're now forcing these things, say you do work at one of these companies, and there's certain people that have autoimmune disorders, they react more negatively. There's different cases like that. They can't, for many different reasons, they can't get this treatment. So, but I care about the fact that this is crossing a line. This is moving into what I call something to be medical tyranny, right? Because like don't we have a founding document in our country, which I believe is the example for how all countries around the world should be formed? That that we are given, that we have God given rights, and that we elect the people. We choose to put the people in charge of us through our permission because we elect them. And the election stuff is a whole other. That's a whole other. It's a whole other category of things that I also can't talk about on here, right? But again, this to me, this is really starting to cross a line, and I think there's a lot of people that are feeling that, a lot of people that are experiencing that. And I see that a handful of people mentioning the Nuremberg trials, and yeah, so let's pull that up really quick. This is an article this was published. Now, see, this was back in June 30th. This article came up, and so this is again June 30th. This is written by a doctor, a medical doctor, and actually two of them that were. I'm not going to dig into the actual article, but this is even as far as June 30th. They're going back. Oh, sorry, June 30th to 2021, where they're basically saying that the jab violates all 10 tenets of the Nuremberg Medical Ethics Code as a guide for permitted medical experiments. So this is something that, if you recall what happened, especially under the Nazi regime, they were using medical experiments. They were basically using people as test subjects, and it was so horrific. It was so terrible that during the Nuremberg trials, they specifically singled these things out. They said, "Look, we have to protect our fellow humans from any government or any regime or anybody in general that's forcing any kind of medical experiments on people." And so these doctors wrote this just last month, less than a couple of weeks ago, stating that that what's happening right now is violating all 10 tenets of the Nuremberg Code. So look, so again, this isn't even about America and the Constitution. This is the world. I mean, the Nuremberg trials, those were to set an example for the whole world on how to prevent ourselves from having what happened in Nazi Germany happen again. Which it also makes me it makes me wonder, why did they ever do that for communism, right? And I don't want to downplay the Holocaust, but let's look at communism and how many millions, right? Mao Zedong alone in China is responsible for upwards of 100 million deaths. Why weren't there ever the communism trials, the trials of communism? Maybe because those that are in control happen to be using communism, right, as their own way to implement their totalitarian control. To me, that's what makes more sense. And I have my own thoughts about the Holocaust. I believe that it absolutely happened, but I think that it was also setting up something to become the boogeyman for in the future, something they could point to, right? It's like you point to this over here while a much more evil thing is creeping in through the door over here, right? So now it's, I see a lot of comments too, like these are frightening times that we're in. They really are. Me personally, right, I was living in a much more not in the middle of the city, but I was in a much more densely populated suburb that earlier. Actually, I moved there late last year, mid-year last year, and was quite happy. And, great parks and everything. But I've recently moved. Like, I made the decision. I gave up a lot of comforts that I had. I was 5 minutes from Whole Foods and a lot of different things, but I saw what was happening, especially in the beginning of last year, mid last year, and said, "Look, we have to make a change. I'm not going to be living in the city anymore." So we moved out. I'm not going to tell you where I'm at. I'm somewhere in Ohio. There you go. I'm still in Ohio, but we've now got enough land to farm and take care of ourselves, and we're far away from a lot of people. So again, I think that I'm not I'm not necessarily someone you'd say is like a hardcore prepper where I'm just waiting for doomsday to come. But by that same token, I value my own freedom, and I want to be in a county where I haven't met the sheriff yet. But I know that where I was coming from, Franklin County is a very rotten county, and those who are in control of it. So I made my own personal decision to come, and have my own freedom, have more land, and not necessarily live off the grid here, but um, just get out of the hectic city. So again, like I think this again, as I mentioned, this is more of a discussion, right? Um, that I wanted to have with you because I think that all of us are going to be facing some tough decisions in the future. Maybe it's them saying that, hey, you're going to lose your job if you don't do X, Y, Z. I think that if you look at what's happening, I think that in a lot of ways that we're just being conditioned. We're being conditioned for giving up our control. Look at the ecology of how people that are put in, say, political prisoners or people that are put into or labor camps or that are captured. If you look into how they are made to submit, right? It's through a lot of things, but a lot of it is psychological torture. And what they do, and ask yourself, if this sounds familiar? They take somebody that they then imprison and they take away their rights. Okay. So they take away the rights to this person and they make it worse and worse and worse. But then what they do is they start giving their rights back. Okay. They start slowly giving some of the freedoms back. And that person feels a little bit of relief. It's like, oh gosh, finally it's over. But then once you feel that relief, they take it back again. Right. Because what it does is what this does is it breaks the will of the individual. And that's what they're trying to do is they're trying to break the will of the individual, right? Even with the mask wearing, it's like, okay, we'll do this. Now we're going to lift the mandates and lift this. And it's like, oh, sorry, you got to wear it again, right? And the lockdowns, people asking if I think they're going to try doing lockdowns again. Um, I think there's a good chance of it. I mean, look, I'm the furthest thing from being a fear monger, right? I really am not someone that wants to come on here and focus on what's negative, but I also want to be really aware. I want to be cognizant of, of what's happening and what they're planning. So again, do I think they might be trying some sort of lockdowns again? I think there's a chance of it. They're already pushing the masks again. But I think though that we're at a point, and this is where, to me, this is where the hope comes in, because I truly believe that we are at a point where people are waking up and people are really seeing through things, especially, like I said, someone that may have rushed out and got the jab and said, okay, I have my freedoms back now. But now if they're going to be doing, say, another lockdown, or you're going to be forced to wear 3 masks, 4 masks, who knows? Fauci will probably want you to wear a bag over your head, you put the cardboard holes cut out in it, right? So, and as they keep flip flopping on that, and the CDC, one of the CDC directors talking about, whether the passports are proper, right? Whether they can be mandating passports. So I think that, to me, it's difficult, but I think that there's so much hope because so many people are now seeing through this agenda, right? And this is part of why I wanted to kind of transition into with this is, like, for instance, this out here in New Hampshire, and this is happening with a lot of governors. Right? And this is also what's been really good about this is because through this, look, before 2020, I never knew or never really cared much for the importance of a state governor or even really paid much attention to the state legislature or let alone local. But what we're seeing is how much control our governors have, both good and bad. Look at Ron DeSantis versus look at Newsom. I never in my life realized, gosh, like I need to pay attention to what's happening in my own state. So in Ohio, for instance, I went out and met Joe Blystone, a super patriot running for governor, and I'm going to try to support him in ways that I can. Okay. But so what we have here in Massachusetts, or so this is New Hampshire, that the governor of New Hampshire, Chris Sununu, if I believe I pronounced his name correctly, said Wednesday that he's opposed to bringing back a mask mandate in the state following the guidance reversal. Again, Fauci, the CDC, they keep flip-flopping, which I think is intentional, right? If you look into mind control programs, how to MK Ultra, it's all about breaking people down. It's about breaking down, what's good, what's evil, to make them think that it's good, and then they get evil. And then it's about really messing and fracturing people's minds, right? So again, the flip flopping, right, is not. I think it's not unintentional. I think it's very intentional. But so here we have that the governor, Chris of New Hampshire, is saying that, and this is there's a quote here I want to read. This is why I use this article, because his quote is so powerful. It says, "Everyone in America agrees that the messaging out of Washington is extremely confusing, and this latest announcement only reinforces that at this time the best solution to getting out of this pandemic lies with the individual." That's it. Lies with the individual. And again, this is the Constitution, right? This is the Constitution that he's talking about. And so what's interesting though is that people are stepping up, right? People are absolutely stepping up. So in Europe, where they've implemented some pretty harsh things very quickly in Europe, if you look at what's happened in France and Greece, but there are seas of people that are out protesting, and these things have those that are in control, the leaders that are in control, supposedly, they are so frightened of we the people. They're so frightened of people coming out because we are the majority. Like that's it. We truly are the majority, and they're so frightened of us realizing that. So I'll read this quickly article about from the Epoch Times is saying anti-lockdown and anti-vaccine passport protests erupted across Europe on, this is from July 24th. And they're continuing. I've got a few videos to show that these protests are absolutely massive, and they're continuing. It says thousands upon thousands of demonstrators came out in London, Dublin, Paris, Rome, Athens, and other major cities across Europe. The demonstrations in France appear to be the most tense. And I think in France, there was around 160,000 people, that were out protesting, right? The week before was 114,000, right? You can see just a little bit here. Let me play this. You can see this is that's just France. So if you look at here, we have, this was in Rome. I think this was maybe last night. This was in Rome. Again, there are so many people standing up. And then we had Vienna, where this is literally the police that are marching together with the people. This is Vienna, Austria. The police, they've taken off their helmets, and they are marching together with the people, showing solidarity. So there have been everywhere. And the reason I wanted to show those to you, though, is because there are, I really, really believe that the majority of people around the world see through this. The majority of people are actually just like you and I. They are the ones that are saying, you know what, we've had enough. I've lost my business. I lost a grandparent. I lost a grandparent in my home, and in the nursing home. People truly are. They're really standing up. They're saying, look, I've had enough of this. And again, do I believe that the virus is real? I do. Like at the beginning, I wasn't sure. I do. But to me, it's whether it justifies the response that the global that the globalists have had. Absolutely not. The response of the jabs, absolutely not. Like to me, it became the perfect vehicle to alter the testing, to hike up the numbers, to use the media to completely, frighten people, because they know that fear will cause people to give up their rights. And that's why they did not allow any discussion about alternate treatments. They wouldn't allow any discussion about, like I can't even say the different drugs that could have maybe helped, because for one, they had to maintain the fear narrative. They had to make you think that there's no cure except for sitting around waiting for the jab. And and I agree. Actually, with "Made in the USA" saying it's flu with a new name. Yes, that's basically why it's I believe it's a variant of the flu. I think that there's some other sinister things that are tied into it that came out of China that and I do it came from a lab out there, but it's not it's not Ebola, right? Like if you watch Little House on the Prairie, and there's which I happen to really enjoy watching that an episode where there was a certain fever or a sickness that was spreading, and it was a true pandemic. It was like one in five people were dying. There was body bags everywhere. It's like, yes, that's what it looks like. But how many of us go to you go to the grocery store and you go somewhere and it's just life is normal? Do you see bodies laying all over the street? Is it like, oh, hey, Billy, how you doing? It's like, oh, I lost my brother, I lost my uncle, my boss at work, he died also. Like that's what a real pandemic would be like. This is something where it's like, oh, that guy sneezed on me on the bus. Like he must be infected. Or actually, what it really is it's like, you might be infected. You should go get tested. It's like, okay, I have to go get tested to see if I've got it. It's that bad, right? So anyway, I think that it was just this massive thing to use the media, and I think it was supposed to be a lot more real, right? That I think that it was supposed to be something very different. And if you watch the interview that I did with Jeff Nyquist, um, that we go heavy into that, and talking about what was the real intention, how does this relate to China, how it was supposed to be much worse. But again, I think that people are seeing through this, and that's what they're so frightened of, because the more of us that see through it, the more we're going to stand up. And the thing is like, and again, I will never call for violence. I don't think that that's how we're going to fight. I think that, to be honest, I think that violence would only exacerbate things and give them many more excuses to come after our Second Amendment and to come after us. So again, I'm not advocating for violence, but what I am advocating for is all of us realizing that we have rights that were given to us by God. And this body was given to me by God. No one on earth has control over this body except for me, because I look as like almost like God gifted it to me to use while here on earth. So like I think that that's what's really important, and that's what the governor of New Hampshire was talking about, is that this is something that this is our choice. And so we have to, again, like I said, I'm not calling for violence, but I think that each of you, you're going to have your own choice to make. And, how do we want to approach this? What do we want to do? How do we want to treat this personally? So for me, it's like I've made my own decision. And, look, if it means I can't go to Whole Foods anymore, you know what? Great. I'll find the local grocery store owner that's going to respect the Constitution and allow me to come in there. And maybe that's a lot of what this is going to be doing for all of us. Is that you look at places like the Shake Shack, they're claiming that, oh, by implementing these new requirements, we're going to see business go up. Well, really, is that really going to happen? What happened to Coca-Cola? Right? What happened to Coca-Cola when Trump called for the boycott of Coca-Cola? Right? What happened when one athlete, said, "Hey, drink water instead"? Right? So what we're seeing is that we truly have the power because we are the majority, for sure. And I think that we control a lot more of the money in this country than the media would want you to know. So, look, if what I would encourage for you, and certainly for me, is that I will never once again step foot into a Shake Shack, because now it's like what's happening now is again, it's the Great Awakening. Everything is being revealed. We are now seeing what are the companies that care about human rights and care about us truly, and what are the ones that are only going to be, basically that are already bought and sold and owned by the globalists. Like what are the companies that are going to be used for our own destruction, versus what are the companies that are going to support the Constitution? And so that's, for me, that's why I'm shifting as much money as I can. I'm shifting as much of my money, my energy into companies that support freedom. And actually, there's something to show you, just kind of quickly though, this is a, um, let me pull this up for you. This is just a quick teaser, but um, actually, I'll get into my next show. As I mentioned before, I'm working on something that we would call an alternative to Netflix. So I talked about it a little bit. I'll go into it more on the next show. I'm not ready to show you actually quite yet, but anyway, we have to now take our turn to just shift, vote with your dollar. So look into which companies are requiring these things, and it's hard, but like, and I know this is difficult, but let's just say that you're in a situation where you, or maybe your husband, where your company is going to say, "Hey, you know what? We're gonna start requiring this." I know it's tough, but is that the kind of company that you want to work for? And this is a difficult thing, but is that really the company that you actually want to work for? Or you want your husband to work for? Um, is it worth going against your own conscience if it's something you truly believe in for that? Or maybe, and look again, maybe this is difficult, but maybe um, you live in an expensive area and maybe it's time to move out into the country and simplify your life. I'm paying less now for a mortgage, which with a much nicer home than I was paying renting a place closer to central Columbus. This home was probably 50% cheaper than it would have been in Columbus. And I've got more land because we made a decision. It's a little more difficult for some reasons, but again, these are the decisions that we have to make. But as I mentioned before, people are truly standing up. This is waking up so many people. And I had one video that I'm almost kind of to the end of this show, but I had one video that I want to share with you today, which again, it's a protest, but it's not the kind of protest that you're thinking of. So let me show you really quickly this next video here, which I think is fantastic. So Joe Biden recently had a visit to Pennsylvania, and let's look at the amount of support that he had coming into Pennsylvania. I'm going to show this to you really quickly. This is Joe Biden's motorcade. So anyway, I wanted to, I always like to end on a more positive note, but the thing is that people are waking up. And look, fundamentally, I absolutely believe that God is in control of all this, and that this is a period of being tested. It's a period. I think that what this is in a lot of ways is it's an opportunity for the bad people to reveal themselves. That's what I really think. One of the biggest things that's happening right now is that the bad people are they're being allowed and encouraged to crawl out from their little caves and reveal themselves and show who they are. And so I know it's tough. I trust me, it's heavy. This is just the time that we're in. It's difficult. And I know that, again, Sandy, I see, your emojis of tears and your heart is broken, and me too. Absolutely. It's a tough time, but right, there is so much good coming out of this, right? There is so much good coming out of this. And people truly are waking up. Pamela, thank you so much. People truly are waking up. There are even people that, say, 5 years ago or 5 months ago, even people like that you never would have imagined, they're now coming to you and saying, hey, you know what? Like, something's not adding up, right? Something is not adding up. So again, while it looks like the earth is really controlled completely by these people that are absolutely just evil lunatics, I still believe that God is in control and that he's allowing the evil to expose itself. So I think that what we have to do is we have to stay centered to keep our faith. We have to take care of our family. I think that part of it is looking at, okay, what are we willing to sacrifice? Let's give up the nice, big 5,000 square foot home in the nice suburbs with a good school system that's probably teaching critical race theory for all you know. Maybe it requires us to, get back to a more simple life, start farming and gardening more. The family that's close to you that you care about, that they share your ideals with you, pull them closer, pull your family closer. And you know what? If they lock things down again, okay, they're going to do it. But you know what? I'm still going to go where I need to go. I'm not going to listen to what rules that they have. I'm going to focus on my family and keep doing what I'm doing. So again, I know it's difficult. Trust me, it's like this is an insane. This is an insane time for us to be alive. It really is. But like I believe that I was chosen to be here at this time. I believe that this period of history is the most significant period of history in the entirety of our human race. And so I think that we have to realize that we have purpose with where we are right now. And all of you that are watching, I think that you're probably one of the ones that have been awakened from the slumber that you may have been in. So again, there truly is hope. God is in control. And the more we can just focus on what we have control over, our faith, our health, our family, the more that we're going to feel empowered. So again, that's it. That's how I really feel. So, I feel positive. I feel like that people are turning towards goodness, like they're waking up. And the ones that are bad, we know who they are now. And we're not going to vote for them. We're not going to give them our money. And eventually, maybe we'll see them go over to get money. So, thanks everyone for joining today. I really, really appreciate it. I gave a speech last weekend, which I'm going to put on my YouTube channel. This is a single video if you want to watch that. I don't want to play Clark's events. There's a lot more going on. If you haven't so far, I recommend you hop over to maninamerica.com and subscribe to the email over there. Follow me on Telegram. But again, thank you everyone. We have so much to be thankful for. At the end of the day, God wins. So I'll see you next Tuesday at noon. Thank you. God bless you and God bless America.